Hey, Mr. McLaren here. I'm going to be going over the artificial selection research project. I've laid out these slides, so if you go through it with your group, you should be able to cover every single part of the project. And I'll have all this linked on Google Classroom for you, as well as the video and some other documents. So if you go through here, there's just like a title page, and then you have to pick one of these subjects. So there's 5 different subjects that you can pick, and you're also going to need to hyperlink any sources that you're using. I'm doing this at home right now, so I can't go through the OSLIS database. I tried to in an earlier recording, and at home I'm getting this page and I don't know what to do from that. But I believe I've done this at school, and I'll just show you how to do that in class. I'll also hyperlink this video if you'd like to watch some more of it if you miss a part. So basically, you'll go through and you'll type in here what technology that you're researching. You'll also type, so if I were you, I would assign different people to these questions. So why was the technology created? Who created the technology? So on and so forth. So you'll be answering these questions. And if I were you, I would try using the these Gale resources, because they're a guaranteed trustworthy source. And that's always hard to find if you're just Googling things. So luckily for us, STEMscopes has this document that I'll be linking for you that goes over how to find a credible source and how to rank sources on being credible. The most important thing is that you're seeing where this information is coming from, because there will be some, like, for example, if you're looking at like genetically modified organisms, there'll be some blogs that are not scientifically based, and the whole saying with like fake news, there's a lot of fake information out there, but you can usually trust like .gov websites, university websites which end in .edu, organization websites, and anything from an academic journal or a reputable news agency, which is, it's kind of hard because some people disagree on what's reputable or not. So if you're not sure about that, check with me. I would in general say like the New York Times is a really good news agency, and like the BBC. Those are two of the ones that I really respect and trust as news sources. So if you're getting anything from them, you can usually trust them. But you shouldn't be just going based off of anything that someone's saying in a forum, because they're not credentialed a lot of the time. They're just people that have heard things. Business website, they may be biased based off of their business, or like blogs, it could just be like another kid's project. Wikipedia, a lot of the times I trust Wikipedia, but just the nature of it means that sometimes people can get some information in there that isn't checked yet. So you want to be considering all these different types of things, like the type of source, who the author is. You should always be checking who's writing what you're reading, when it was published, who reviewed it, the citations that it's using. Like anything that's science-based should be saying where their information is coming from. And if you picked like a government website, there's going to be an expert writing things. It may be out of date, it may be recent. It should have been reviewed by experts. If it's government website, they will cite things, and a government website should be balanced, as opposed to like a blog. The blog maybe usually aren't very credible. The author sometimes isn't an expert in the field, and may not even be knowledgeable in the field. Could be recent, out of date. They could also be, a blog is never reviewed by experts. Almost never. They oftentimes don't cite their sources, and it's not referencing any scientific work a lot of the time. And it's kind of hard to know, but a lot of blogs are pretty heavily biased. So you want to be looking at all these different things when you're looking at your sources. So if I were, let's say I was looking at one of these questions, let's say I was looking at who created this technology. If I just Google, like, let's just pick one randomly. Let's go with like animal husbandry. So if I say who created animal husbandry, and luckily Google can catch things. So there's a couple different websites that come up here. Of course, Wikipedia is one of the top ones, but we usually don't want to cite something from there. Britannica might give us a good source, but it's a .com. There's a .org, but I'm not familiar with that .org. So if I were to just go off of what they've got here, this ancient.eu, I've forgotten what .eu stands for. But you can read what they have here. We can see the author. We can see when it was published. You know, all these things that we talked about considering. So we can see that this person's a historian who's taught a number of different things at the college level. Pretty credible author. But if I were you, I would just double check with an org that you're not familiar with. You can always see their about page, and it'll give you a little bit of background about what the organization is. So this is a nonprofit. They're working on making a good encyclopedia. They're just trying to improve historical education. So usually when I'm looking at these things, I also kind of want to know who the founder is and why they founded the organization. So if I wanted to double check the source, I oftentimes look at who wrote the who created this. So it seems like this guy has a pretty non-biased mission statement. I do kind of want to check what a .eu is, but it looks like there's a lot of partners here, but you could also research who these partners are. Not really seeing a lot of things I'm super familiar with. So although the mission statement sounds pretty good and it looks like this guy is a fairly non-biased person, we can also look at what this award was. So if I were you, I would always double check your sources to check if it's credible, if you're going to cite anything from there. But anyways, let's say I go to one that I know is pretty credible. Again, edu. So we got a state college edu, and it's got some history. So this is from a college. So Iowa State University, pretty good university. Pretty credible. You can check like who the author was. And so you can pretty safely cite some stuff from here. You'll be learning in your language arts classes more about citing, but for our purposes, you can hyperlink. So if I want to hyperlink, I can highlight this text right here, and I think I was asking who created this technology. So actually this is the history of the animal department. So that's not what we're looking for. So sorry, I made a little cut there. Actually, it looks like the EU domain is for the European Union, so it's like finding a .gov. So this is actually a pretty good source. So let's say I wanted to cite something from this. So it looks like it's saying that animal husbandry began around 10,000 years ago. So if you wanted to put that in your slides, you could say, it doesn't say exactly where, but it looks like domestication was probably common throughout Asia by 8,000 BC. So you could write something like animals were starting to be domesticated at 8,000 CE in Asia, but it may have started as early as 10,000 years ago, I think is what they said. Actually, isn't that? Actually, that's the same time period because 8,000 BCE is 10,000 years ago. So, yeah. And if you wanted to hyperlink this, you can highlight your text. You go up to right here, this hyperlink button, and then you can copy and paste a link in. So if I wanted to use this as my source, I can copy Control-C and paste Control-V, and I've hyperlinked my source. So I've got my source hyperlinked, I've got my statement, and if you wanted to, you could also throw in an image or two. So that's how you hyperlink a document. Again, I would recommend doing this with Gale, just because they're guaranteed trusted source. You should be looking at your sources closely. So this looks to be like a pretty good source. I wanted to also show you an example of a source that I wouldn't trust. So a lot of times you can find like creation science, which is kind of tends to push more of religious views on some of these things. So this is going to have some biased information on it. So they're going to be not a neutral source because they're pushing a religion-based agenda. So you want to be careful about where your sources are coming from. Are they biased? I don't see anything about the author here. I don't see anything about, let's see. I don't see anything about the author. I don't see any citations. I don't see that that's been reviewed by anyone. So it's pretty safe to say that something like that would not be a good source because of the bias that's inherent in it and the fact that they don't have an expert author. Because usually with credible sources, you can find an author. So yeah, that's how you find credible sources and not credible sources with Google. And make sure you're also hyperlinking your answers to questions so that other people can see where you found the information that you're sharing. I'll see you in class. Thank you for joining me. This has been Mr. McLaren.